Unemployment is a big, scary word, especially to people like you and me. It is paired with words like hungry, struggling, poverty, and homelessness. However, in terms of macroeconomics, unemployment is unavoidable. I know it seems crazy, right? But let's start from the beginning. The definition of unemployment means the state of being unemployed. Well, that was helpful, right? Video can be over now? A plus? Looking at you, Professor B.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
Wrong.
proved over and over again.
Wrong.
He actually.
Fine. I guess if I have to continue, let's talk about the types of unemployment. Before we can begin to understand what cyclical unemployment is, we need to understand what the natural rate of unemployment is. The natural rate of unemployment is basically the average that is estimated by economists to give us kind of the baseline of what the unemployment rate is for the country on average. This allows us to understand what cyclical unemployment is. Cyclical unemployment is basically any deviation from the natural rate of unemployment. So cyclical unemployment will really follow what the business cycles are doing right now. So it'll kind of follow that boom and bust system, so the up and down curve of the economy throughout the year. In short, basically if businesses are doing well and they're producing a lot and they're maximizing their output, then cyclical unemployment is going to be low because businesses are going to need to retain their workers. Now, if businesses are not doing well, then obviously they're not going to need as many employees as they had needed previously, so cyclical unemployment will be high. Our second type of unemployment is frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment arises when people are in between jobs. When a person leaves employment and searches for another, the time it takes would be considered frictional unemployment. For example, this guy here is about to enter frictional unemployment.
Quitting his job today. Hey, hey, hey. I'm leaving.
Now, this is usually a temporary time period, so frictional unemployment is actually pretty short term. And since we are a country which allows people to choose their own employment, looking at you, North Korea, we will always have frictional unemployment present. Our third and final type of unemployment is structural unemployment. Structural unemployment occurs when the jobs available do not match the skills level of the unemployed. It's caused by a total shift in the economy, which makes it much harder to correct and often results in longer rates of unemployment. It can be caused by two things: technological advances, like robots replacing skilled workers. Oh, sorry, wrong video. Not sure if they're replacing anybody in that one. But basically, it can be caused by robots replacing unskilled workers, which requires workers to get more training and acquire new skills in order to regain employment. Now, that often takes much longer time than something like frictional unemployment. The second cause would be trade agreements, for example, something like NAFTA, an agreement which lifted many trade restrictions and made it more profitable for businesses to relocate, leaving many without jobs.
Yeah, they took your jobs! They took your jobs! They took your jobs! Your jobs!
Oh, they took our jobs!
They took your jobs!
Now that we know what the types of unemployment are, who calculates the unemployment rates and collects the data? Well, that would be the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS. It is a unit of the U.S. Department of Labor, which principal goal is to collect labor statistics and data. And what is the Department of Labor? Well, the purpose of the Department of Labor is to foster, promote, and develop the well-being of the wage earners, job seekers, and retirees of the United States, improve working conditions, advance opportunities for profitable employment, and ensure work-related benefits and rights. Wow, that was a mouthful. Basically, it's the part of the government that monitors and reports on unemployment. When we look at the unemployment rate or labor force participation or anything like that, we need to consider who is not included in these calculations. There are three types of people who are not included in the calculations, and that would be students, homemakers, and retirees. Now, those who are considered employed would be those who worked as paid employees, worked in their own business, or worked as unpaid workers in a family member's business. Both full-time and part-time workers are counted, and this category includes anyone who may have jobs that they're temporarily absent from. So somebody who's on vacation or ill, or recently a big event that happened would be the hurricanes. So those people would still technically be considered employed even though their jobs may be closed down for weeks or months. Now, you'd be considered unemployed if you were available for work and you've tried to find employment during the previous 4 weeks. Also, if you're waiting to come back to a job that you may have been laid off. Now, when we talk about labor force, the labor force is the number of employed plus the number of unemployed. Those combined equal the labor force. Now, in order to calculate the unemployment rate, we take the unemployed and divide it by the labor force. Now, calculating the unemployment rate is not a perfect calculation or science. That is because there are individuals who are unable to be included in the calculation. Those would be people who are being paid under the table, or somebody like a discouraged worker. A discouraged worker is somebody who would like to work, but they've pretty much given up on looking for a job. So how can the government help with unemployment? Well, for something like frictional unemployment, they can provide work programs or skill training programs, which will minimize the time it takes for somebody to find new employment. While somebody is looking for employment, they can actually provide unemployment insurance. I know what you're thinking, unemployment insurance, unemployment benefits. You're probably thinking somebody is doing this all day.
Today I don't feel like doing anything. I just wanna lay in my bed.
Now, unemployment insurance is kind of controversial. There's pros and cons to the program. It allows the pros would be it allows people more time to search for jobs, ensuring they find a job that's more suited to them. They also ensures that people have at least a portion of their income, which allows them to upkeep their standard of living and continue to consume products. Now, there are some cons as well. People respond to incentives. So when you take away the incentive to find a job, like you take away the fact that they have no money and they need to buy something, it actually can prolong the unemployment because people don't feel the need to go right out and get another job. Also, like any benefit, it can be exploited. Outside from the general boom and bust of the economy, what are some things that can worsen unemployment? Well, policy can, or unions. So policy that increases the minimum wage above the equilibrium can actually worsen the unemployment rate. Also, unions that push for higher wages above the equilibrium can worsen unemployment. On our next slide, we're going to look at a graph that kind of displays this. Here we have our standard supply and demand chart with wage and quantity on our axes. Here we have our heart, our center, which is the equilibrium wage, meaning this is the point where the quantity of labor supplied equals the quantity of labor demanded. Now, this line here represents the minimum wage, or let's say the union's wage that they argued for. Since this wage exceeds the equilibrium wage, we have a couple of shifts to our graph. Our purple dot represents what the labor supplied will be after this shift of minimum wage. So the labor supplied is going to increase, obviously because more people are going to be vying for that job at a higher wage, while the blue dot represents the labor demand. The business, in order to remain profitable, is not going to be able to pay the wage for all those who wish to have it at this point. So this is actually going to be what the business is going to demand for the quantity. And now this middle here represents a surplus of labor. This is all of the workers who really want that job at that wage, but the business is just not able to maintain it. So this point between these two dots actually equals the unemployment. So here we have it. We've learned what unemployment is, what types of unemployment there are, who calculates unemployment, how to calculate it, and what the government can do to help. I hope you enjoyed the video. Now I know the video is over, but I thought it'd be a good idea to include some true and false or multiple choice at the end, just to give you guys a quick way to review before the final exam. So let's go over some true and false and multiple choice.